Hi there and welcome. Thank you for being a part of the first live stream for Atlas Water and Electric on this celebration of Earth Day. I'm Michaela Pereira. Ahead, we're going to introduce you to this groundbreaking technology, which could very well be a watershed moment in achieving sustainability. Ahead, you'll meet the founders of the company, you'll learn how the AW system functions, and you'll hear their ambitious plans to address the climate and global water crisis. And of course, we'll leave an opportunity for you to ask questions. So, let's get started. We're going to show you a video on how the AW works.
Say hello to the Atmospheric Wind Extractor, or as we like to simply call it, the AW. The AW is the latest wind energy provider that is reliable, can be placed anywhere, and operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Here is a cursory look into the inner workings of the AW. The wind capture panels are attached to the upper tower. Housed on the main rotating structure are the airflow amplification systems, which incorporates Venturi impulse force exhaust thrust. The wind capture panels accommodate wind force and reduce drag. The flutter vane modules were designed to collect compressed air in winds less than 2 miles per hour. The external propellers connected to air compressors add additional thrust and controls overall speed. All wind capture elements are mounted on the rotating drive shaft. Descending down the tower from the drive shaft, we connect to the rotating main flywheel, which is the predominant torque power source linked to the compressor modules. There are 3 main sets of compressor modules: the flutter vane compressors, the air scoop propeller-driven compressors, and the main flywheel-driven compressors. Encircling the tower and attached to the compressors is the air intake ducting, supplying cooled dewatered intake air to an assembly of compressors. Here is a closer look at one of several large air compressors attached to the main flywheel. A key benefit of this device is the CO2 extraction system, or carbon scrubber, designed to remove CO2 from the captured air. Compressed air is transferred to the circulating heat exchanger. It increases the density of the air being stored and reheats the released air to run air motors which engage the generators. Working pressure energy is stored in the low pressure tanks. High pressure tanks store the bulk energy. Air is boosted to 5,000 psi for storage. Outtake air is regulated to 90 psi to accommodate for air motors. Compressed air is delivered to generator modules to drive rotation components that operate banks of electric generators, producing electricity 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This houses the electrical interconnection cabling and the voltage regulations equipment. AW installation sites allow interconnection to existing utility distribution lines, even in urban settings. This will provide a distributed generation of power. One of the most important components of the AW are its forced rotation modules. This unique feature uses less than 5% of the stored compressed air to apply force to the drive shaft, thereby causing rotation to continue during no wind conditions for up to 14 days, and to supplement rotation during light wind periods. This system uses cold decompressed air to chill the liquid in the condenser circulating system to below dew point. This function filters out airborne particulates as part of the treatment process. The water vapor condenser condenses the water vapor into a liquid water by reducing the temperature of the air below dew point. The water treatment modules ensure that any airborne bacteria or organisms are killed, creating potable water. After being treated, the now potable water is temporarily stored in these tanks. You've now met the only renewable energy device capable of providing utility-scale electricity on par with nuclear, coal, and natural gas. The patented AW Atmospheric Wind Extractor is the least expensive, most reliable renewable with 24/7 energy storage 365 days a year. It's the AW. Simply put, it's awesome. Thanks for watching.
Allow me to introduce Brian Tochi, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Atlas Water and Electric. What a delight to have you here, Brian. Wait, that name is familiar to fans of films, especially if you're a watcher of Revenge of the Nerds, Police Academy, and so many others. And it begs the question, how on earth does a Hollywood actor get involved in renewable energy?
Well, actually, there's a corollary between being in entertainment and how I got involved. It's interesting because doing the kind of films that I've done and them being well known, it afforded me the opportunity to help out in different charities, be involved in different venues that helped others out. There was this one large charity that I was a part of, and it was a big success. And at the end of it, this one big event, at the end of it, the CEO, he came up to me and he said, Brian, if there's anything that we can do again together, let's make that happen. So I said, absolutely. So about 6 months after that, and he lives 100 some odd miles away, he calls me up and he goes, Brian, I was wondering if you could come over, plan on spending the day, and I'd like to introduce you to somebody. And I go, okay, well, who is it that you want me to meet and what is it for? He says, I can't tell you. I go, you can't tell me? He says, no, either you come or you don't. So that piqued my interest. So what happened was I arranged to go the next week. I rented a car. I drove down to his home. And when I got there, they welcomed me, and there was these big monitors, computer monitors set up. And so what happened is they showed me the atmospheric wind extractor. And what was so interesting is that as they were taking me through the whole process of how it works, how it operates, and what it does, I go, oh my goodness, I understand how this works. I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm not a scientist, and that's what makes this so unique. This is what makes the atmospheric wind extractor technology work. It is really taking existing technologies that have been around and operating in existence for decades. They amalgamated it in a unique and patentable way to create a standalone 100% renewable energy production device that is scalable. So you can have a small system and ratchet it up to a massive utility scale production output. And I go, I can't believe what I'm seeing. This can change the planet. And it wasn't lost on me. And I said, I have to be involved. And so.
And involved you are.
And involved
Chief
I am.
Operating Officer, which let's jump into digging into how it is actually addressing the climate crisis, because it really kind of addresses four of the main tenets of the climate crisis: baseload, carbon capture, water production, and distributed power generation. And let's go over it one by one.
Sure.
How does AW produce baseload electricity? Help us understand that.
Well, what's interesting is, first of all, there is no 100% renewable energy system that can create baseload power. Baseload basically is, the base amount of power a municipality, a city, a town would need to operate and function. And then at peak times, they need more, but basically it's the amount of power that they consistently need on a regular basis. That's baseload. Because the OSS systems are not only 100% renewable, they are 24/7. They operate 24/7, which is, there's nothing else. I mean, unlike wind turbines, which only operate when the wind's blowing, unlike solar panels, which operate when the sun's going, these OSS systems work consistently. What also makes this so unique is not only is it producing utility scale power, baseload, but what it also does is produces, as a byproduct, water.
And that's that second part.
That's the second part.
The fact that it can produce water, and it's a byproduct. It wasn't even the initial function of the AW.
Correct.
How does it produce the water?
Well, because billions of cubic feet of air are going through the system at any given time, we are de-watering the air before it goes into the tanks. Okay. Let me give you kind of an idea of what the system, how it's simply put together. And what I saw from the very beginning. There's a wind capture element at the top. It's on a tower that goes down to a main flywheel. The flywheel is then attached to compressors these compressors compress air, and the compressed air goes to air tanks. The air tanks have a 90 psi continuous flow out to another bank of compressor/air motors,
Okay.
which are connected to generators, which produce the electricity. Very, very simple. So what we do is, because there's so much air going through the system, we are able to, before it goes into the compressed air tanks, we're dewatering it. And so we're capturing that water. If you go into like an automotive center, for example, and you see you hear the lug,
Yeah.
right? Okay, that's a compressor that's undoing them or
Yes.
putting them in. When you have a compressor, the byproduct there is water.
Yes.
You have water coming out.
Yes.
Now just take this on a larger scale.
And all of that water is the byproduct.
Exactly.
So those two things enough alone would make it a prospect worth investing in. But you add to it, it can scrub carbon. Explain that to me.
Carbon scrubbing, it's interesting. This is, again, technology that's been around for decades. What we use for the larger systems, we attach carbon scrubbers. And so because the air is going through, we're able to just filter that, capture that carbon, and actually not only remove the carbon from the atmosphere, but we're able to utilize some of that carbon for other things, carbon fibers, et cetera. It's amazing.
It is amazing. And then lastly, I want you to explain distributed power generation and more importantly, why that matters.
Okay, distributed power generation. What's interesting is, if you're in a city, we're in Southern California, and we have power companies that get their power and they distribute it through high tension lines.
Mm-hmm.
We can take power from one place and transfer it to another place. The beauty of these OS systems is that it doesn't need any third party kind of fuel. It doesn't have to be connected to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
You can literally place these where the power is needed. And so what we can do is we can distribute these in different areas where the need is, and without having to worry about being attached to the grid. And that's basically distributed generation.
You've explained how the system's set up, but if someone was driving by one of the systems, they might mistake it for a wind turbine, but they're functionally quite different.
It's interesting. It initiates with the wind.
Yes.
And
that's where the similarity ends.
Right, exactly. You are so smart, Michaela. It can initiate in less than 2.5 miles an hour of wind.
That's incredible.
It is incredible, because in the wind capture elements, we have mini compressors. And that's the key, is these compressors. As it turns and it goes on rotates the flywheel, the compressors then compress massive quantities of air. And so what happens is we take less than 5% of the captured air,
mm-hmm.
and reroute it back into the flywheel,
mm-hmm.
and we can dial in that speed. So in essence, because we produce so much captured air, compressed air, we can use it even during no wind conditions.
I was about to ask, because there are many times when the wind is, much to a sailor's chagrin,
right.
There isn't any wind.
Correct.
Does the off function in that case?
We can go anywhere from 13 to 14 days without wind. However, NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency, which monitors, wind, water, all that kind of thing. Well, they have, around the world, they have not found a place that was populated that has gone 15 to 18 hours without wind. So it's kind of a moot point, as far as needing the wind, needing to go 13, 14 days.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, in the case of extreme wind, how does the stand up?
Well, that's also the beauty of it. It is so well put together that at the top, it looks like Venetian blinds, the wind capture aspects of it. So there's like Venetian blinds that can open and close. So if there's a small amount of wind, we can keep them closed and it will rotate. During high, let's say even hurricane force winds, gale force winds, we can open up these systems, and they're all monitored remotely, by the way. We can open up the systems and let the air go, and we still can have the rotation of the flywheel dialed in at, let's say, 7 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour.
You spoke of the compressor earlier. I mean, is that the same compressor that we all know? I mean, are these the pieces and the parts of the are they off the shelf, as you mentioned, all of them?
Yes. Oh, well, this is the thing. What's so great about I'll repeat myself, which is saying that it's technology that's been around and in use for decades. We use about 80% off-the-shelf parts. We have two secret sauce elements about these things.
You're not going to tell them to me.
Well, I can in a broad way. Okay, one of them is that we use less than 5% of the captured air to maintain the rotation of the flywheel. Okay, that's one of the kind of secrets, and we can dial in that rotation. But the key are our compressors. Our compressors are about 70 times more powerful than any compressors off the shelf, and that's where the system really takes off. So that's our secret.
Brian, thank you so much for explaining this all to us. It's very exciting.
You bet. Thank you, Michaela.
All right, now we get to hear from John McCrimmon, who is the Vice President of Business Development, and he joins us from Lesotho. John, it's a delight to have you with us. Your background has largely been in finance. How on earth did you get involved in Atlas Water and Electric?
Well, I came across this opportunity to help Atlas Water and Electric and All Industries LLC through a mutual friend of Mega Boston. Once Mega and I started speaking, Mega was actually seeking some financial advisory services. And the more that we talked about this, the more I wanted to get involved. Once I was offered the opportunity, I had to take it, Michaela.
And you volunteered to go to Lesotho. You've been there on the ground for several months working with the government utilities. Why don't you bring us up to speed on where the project stands in Lesotho?
Sure. Well, we're working with a public utilities company, Wasco, which is water and sewage company. We're doing a deal with them. It's a 7 megawatt deal. We're doing it in phases, 4 and then 3. And I say only 7 because it's going to mushroom into hundreds of megawatts. We're right now at the stage of ready to sign the full agreement. We've agreed on everything else. So we're just waiting to sign, which I believe is maybe a week away. Okay. And what we're doing is they're over all the dams in the country. Water is a major thing in this country, and they sell a lot of this water to South Africa. So they need these huge, massive pumps to pump the water from Lesotho into South Africa. And they use a lot of electricity, which, by the way, Wasco is the largest consumer of electricity. So we was able to get something done so we can lower their electricity bills. And I think that they're going to be really happy with the savings that they'll get.
You know, it's important to make that connection for sure. Why don't you set the stage of how the state of energy is currently in Lesotho? Is this a priority for the nation?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. They, the Kingdom of Lesotho, because it is a monarch. What happens here is they produce 60% electricity on their own, and they buy 40% from neighboring countries, such as like Mozambique, South Africa. Their major source, which is a 60%, like I said, of the electricity, that source is a water type hydro source. And that source is going offline in October of this year, 2024. So this is a country that is already having issues with electricity, and now it is going to be a real big problem with the 60% being missing. So I think awe is coming here at the right time, at the right place, and I think that we're going to do really well here because not only are we replacing that 60%, but we're going to be more efficient than what they had before.
I imagine that partnerships are key. Why don't you talk to us about how significant those partnerships are for an independent power producer?
Oh, they're vital. They're vital. I couldn't be here without those alignments in place. You have to have local. You have to have local because there's always the language barrier here and the communication. Like I have walked into ministers' offices, greeted them, and my local partners here as well with me. And then the minister would look at my local partner and say to him in their local tongue, "What did he just say?" So you really need to have a local partner. And my local partner is not only, obviously he's a local guy, but he's also an engineer. So he speaks their language in their mother tongue, which makes things so much easier.
And there's a language that all of you speak as well, being in this space of, energy. There's a certain language there that clearly needs to be communicated. So to that end about partnerships, you're working in conjunction with U.S. Foreign Service, U.S. Aid, the embassy, et cetera. Talk to us about the importance of relationships with those entities.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, when you first get here, like I would say when anyone travels abroad, even if it's just for leisure, that you should go to your embassy, let them know that you're here, where you're going to be, and who the people you're going to be with. So that is key. That's one. Two, for myself, the embassy notifies me of different things that's going on, different like events and so forth. So it's not always all business. So, and then when they do events, I get to go in and I get to hear an American accent, after not hearing for such a long time. And they get food sent in, and I'm eating Lay's potato chips, so it's they do other things besides go to bat for us, which they do. They go into places that I can't reach. And when an American ambassador, like Madam Ambassador Brewer here, she went to bat for us, and the windows, the doors, everything opened up pretty quickly after she was able to have conversations at the highest level in the government.
Well, it sounds as though we need to send a care package of things from home to Lesotho, to you, John. Thanks so much for making time for us to be part of the live stream today. John McCrimmon, the VP of Business Development for Atlas Water and Electric. All right, allow me to introduce you to Medgar Boston, who's the CEO of Atlas Water and Electric. Nice to have you here to talk about it feels a little complex to me. If you were to explain the technology to my mother, how would you do that?
Well, I would tell Mom that the atmospheric wind extractor is not much more complex than a bicycle. 85% of the parts, as Brian said before, are off the shelf. And the elements could have been built at any time. I've had these thought experiments that I played around with to think about if I had dropped all into a particular time period, would it have functioned? And I was able to go back in my thought experiment as far back as Roman times.
You're kidding.
Because the Romans built aqueducts, they had complex machinery, they had flywheels, which is one of the main components. Windmills have been around forever. So they would have been able to produce water from compressed air because they could have built a compressor. Now, they didn't know how to use electricity, but the functionality of the device would have been there.
That's remarkable. Listen, it's fascinating to me to think by trade, you're a project director. You have been involved in all sorts of large scale projects. You got involved, if I understand it correctly, in shortly after its inception, some 12 years ago. You've been CEO now for 5 years. As CEO, what are your goals? What's your mission?
Well, the mission is to see if we can take this technology around the world in a way that will allow us to have the greatest impact on the greatest amount of people.
Understood.
Right? In so much as that what we want to do is we want this technology to be used where it's needed most and not to be exploited by bad actors, so to speak.
I understand. And that's an important aspect when you're dealing globally. Look, the ambitions of in terms of the short-term goals, they're fairly lofty. How do you plan on meeting those goals?
Well, we have a really well-established team. We have team members already in Africa. We have some team members in the South Pacific. We have great team members here in the United States. So we're going to attack the global implementation of all in an inclusive way. We want to use the population where the technology is needed. We want to use that expertise in those countries to help us help them.
We heard from John McCrimmon about some of the expansion plans in Africa. And in addition to that, you're interested in exploring addressing the environmental and social impact of the project in various African nations. I want you to address that, what your ideas are there.
Well, I think the first thing, the most important thing, is to see if we can affect change where there are places with severe drought. See if we can affect change where there's need for me, there's four pillars of any successful state, right? Energy security, national security, meaning military, health, how healthy is your population, right? And food security. So all addresses two of those, energy and food.
The two pillars that you're able to help
Yeah.
fulfill the other two
Yes.
needs, actually. It all
Right.
goes hand in hand.
Exactly.
Doing international business is always complex, as we know. There are rules to comply with in the nation that you're doing business with. How do you navigate that?
Well, we find and locate really experienced partners, right? We can't go into a country and insert ourselves into that population. We have to locate partners, and we work closely with the U.S. Embassy to help facilitate and navigate through some of the regulations in our country and make sure we're in compliance here, and also in compliance in the country by using the trained lawyers, the trained accountants, the trained engineers that are in that country already that want to come work with us. So that's how we do that.
You have fairly lofty ambitions beyond the immediate future of AWE.
Well, yes. So I have these thought experiments. And like Brian said earlier, we scrub carbon, right? One of the problems, I think, with regard to climate change is the amount of carbon that's released. And if we're scrubbing carbon, we've actually run numbers, and we looked at, as an example, Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco is one of the largest oil companies in the world, if not the largest.
Okay.
They produce millions of barrels of oil, and each barrel of oil produces X amount carbon. So we ran the numbers, and I had the guys run the numbers. We ran the numbers, and we figured out if we had 7,000 of our largest oil systems around North Africa and the Sahel, the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, we would be able to scrub enough carbon to make oil and gas carbon neutral. So that's a lofty goal. So I would like to partner with every oil company and use our systems to scrub carbon, right? And then we can make gas and oil carbon neutral.
My goodness. So you talk about global efforts, global ambitions. Had you originally set your sights on Lesotho?
No, our original plan was to only work in California. California has the fourth largest economy in the world. We have very large employers. We have a huge need for electricity and water. So my plan was to exclusively work in California. I would like to start buying decommissioned power plants and recommission those power plants to renewable energy. I would like to buy nuclear power plants. There's a couple of nuclear power plants in California. I would like to see those. We would buy those and retrofit those with renewable energy. Those are my plans. Those are my ambitious plans.
How did Africa come into the picture?
Well, I happen to be fortunate enough to be invited, included in a trade mission in Kenya. And I met some wonderful people from the U.S. Commerce Department. And that started a ball rolling with people we met. Then John volunteered to go into Lesotho. And so that's how it happened. And so, whatever I had planned didn't necessarily work out, but that's okay. So I'm happy where we are.
It seems to me it goes beyond this amazing, groundbreaking technology. You seem to hope that it's going to have an impact beyond just energy in these nations where you have the office.
Well, see, we're starting in new countries from scratch. So we actually have an opportunity to create and change a paradigm in how business is done. And so I like the idea of creating an idea lab where we empower the young people, not just with scholarships, but the ability to create, have creative spaces for children, have daycare for working parents, because we're a 24-hour company. So we want to give everybody the opportunity by providing daycare. And a lot of people, like most of us, are aging and we have aging parents. So we can offer daycare not just for kids, but for aging parents. And so those are the things that I can create from scratch because we're doing this from scratch. So that's what my plans are.
Lofty, ambitious, but also really exciting. A pleasure to speak with you. Medgar Boston, CEO of Atlas Water and Electric.
Thank you.
All right, I expect you have many questions, and hopefully you've been posting them in the chat room. We're going to get Brian and Medgar back up here to answer some of those questions.
Thank you, Michaela, and thank you to our audience for tuning into this live broadcast. So Boston and I were just handed some questions that some of you had, so let's see what we can do to answer these. Okay, from Palessa, can the system work independently from the grid? As a matter of fact, yes. It was designed to work with the grid or outside of the grid. The beauty of the OSS systems is that it will produce power whether or not it's connected to and delivering power via the power lines. We can have the system directly next to where the power is needed, a building, a facility, whatever. So the answer is yes, we can be independent of the grid.
Here's a question I got. How do we contact all? Well, the best way to contact all in Lesotho is to reach out to John McCrimmon, Shamil Hediarachi, and Gabriel Sintamela. Other than that, the best way is to go through our website, contact at the-awe.com, or you can contact if you're in a foreign country, contact your foreign service representative, either through the Embassy, USAID, the Commerce Department. They can help you get in contact with us.
Okay, next question. How big is the OSS system? Well, the OSS system is a scalable system. So we can start as low as 1 megawatt that can be ratcheted up to 3 megawatts, or we can have a 3 to 5, 5 to 13, 13 to 48 megawatt, which is our largest system. So it basically is whatever amount of power is needed, we can scale up for that production.
Has there been any third-party certifications? So I'm not sure what that question means, but I will give my best attempt at an answer. So the technology's been certified to work to connect to the California grid by the California Public Utilities Commission. Also, it's been certified to connect to the grid in Lesotho by WASCO. So I think that's the third party. We ran our own internal testing and in compliance with the California Public Utilities Commission, and we passed as we thought we would. So I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay, from Thompson. Brian, how is the CO2 extracted, by absorption or extraction? For the larger systems, we've taken existing technology here again for the CO2, for the carbon. They have what they call carbon scrubbers. So what we've done is we can attach these carbon scrubbers, and because billions of cubic feet of air are going through the system at any given time, we're able to scrub with these systems, these carbon scrubbers, the carbon out of the air. So it's basically extracted from the wind airflow.
Here's my last question. Who performs maintenance on the OSS systems? The answer to that question is we use local engineers, maintenance and operation professionals. In the case of Lesotho, well, we've actually sourced and hired some of the best engineers and maintenance people to perform the maintenance on those systems. And we do that in each installation, wherever it is in the world. We try to use as much local talent, bring them over to our facilities and train them so they'll have the best training. And then when they get back, all the operation and maintenance is performed in Lesotho or wherever the location is.
Okay, next question. How clean is the water? Is it drinkable or does it have to go through a treatment first? All right, well, basically, the water is extracted from the air. I mean, there are systems that have done that. So basically, you can look at it like rainwater. So basically, the system is creating rainwater, and to make it drinkable, all you have to do is simply treat it, for drinkability. But basically, it's considered potable water. So just think of it as rainwater, and you can alter it for drinkability very easily. What is the order delivery time frame? So basically, we're looking at around 11 months from when we first get the order to delivery. There's going to be different variables, whether, let's say it's in a different country. It also depends on the terrain. Do we hook up to the municipality? Is it a separate kind of hookup with, is the system going to be in a facility outside of the grid? So different variables factor into this. So I would say basically 10, 11 months for delivery of an operating system. And let's see. Well, I think that's kind of it. Is that you?
Yep, that's it.
All right, well, our host, Michaela, spoke yesterday with Lesotho's Natural Resources Minister, Maleko. And so here's a little bit of that interview for you right now.
We have such a pleasure of being able to be in conversation with the Honorable Moshlomi Maleko, Minister of Natural Resources in Lesotho, who joins me now. Minister, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself professionally. How long have you been the Minister of Natural Resources there in Lesotho?
It's about 1.5 years, but by profession I'm a chartered accountant, but decided to go into politics to take my destiny into my own hands.
I appreciate that, sir. So many of us do. I'm curious what your first impressions were when you initially heard about Atlas Water and Electric.
No, I was quite excited because they are coming with new technology that you could actually have a small setup and scale up depending on your finances or your capital.
It is an impressive system. As Minister of Natural Resources overseeing WASCO, how does integration of Atlas Water and Electric benefit WASCO and meet your needs for sustainability?
Yeah, the thing is that the WASCO is the water and utility company in Lesotho. So they have a problem of using quite a lot of electricity in terms of their water purification systems. But they are currently on the main grid. And we believe that AWE's proposed system would reduce their cost greatly. So we want to set them up as a pilot project. Once they are successful, then we could scale up and put them onto the main grid.
Talk to us about the current state of energy in Lesotho and the vision for sustainability and the role you play in that, sir.
Yeah. Well, Lesotho is quite a small country, 30,000 square kilometers, with about 2.2 million people. So being a developing country, the energy needs are quite small at this point in time. We need about 200 megawatts of electricity, but we currently have one hydropower station that produces 72 megawatts. So the shortfall we get from Eskom in South Africa and also from EDM in Mozambique. So with this new technology that's been proposed by AWE, it means that once we do the pilot with WASCO and it works properly, then we can use them maybe to provide part of the deficiency.
That's incredible. I know that holds a lot of promise for your nation. Mr. Moleko, thank you so much. We're so honored that you would join us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, so you've heard from the founders of AWE, and you've heard about their incredible vision for AWE and the pressing need for solutions for the climate crisis, the water crisis, and the energy crisis. And of course, you got an update from John about what's currently underway on the ground in Lesotho. We look forward to working with Foreign Service officials from the U.S. and other nations. Be sure to contact your Foreign Service representative in your nation if you're interested in partnering with us. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us on this celebration of Earth Day.